Welcome, and thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Crexi Podcast, an insider's look at all things commercial real estate. Each week, we sit down with CRE experts to uncover trends, insights, and strategies shaping the industry. I'm Shanti Ryle, Director of Content Marketing here at Crexi, and today we are very excited to sit down with Karl Finkelstein of Valbridge Property Advisors. Karl, welcome.
Thanks, Shanti.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you here. Of course, our listeners wouldn't know this, but it took us a few tries to get the technology working, the calendar working, but we pushed through and you're here on the show, and we're very excited to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good to be here.
Yes. And before we get into the meat and potatoes of our conversation, I'd love to share with our audience a little bit about you. So, Karl Finkelstein, MAI, is a seasoned real estate professional with over 27 years of experience, specializing in the appraisal of complex commercial properties. As the Vice President of Marketing and Business Development at Valbridge Property Advisors, he plays a pivotal role in redefining valuation through innovative technology and a broad network of appraisers. His leadership extends to serving on the board of directors and holding the prestigious MAI designation from the Appraisal Institute. Karl is committed to fostering client relationships nationally and internationally, leveraging his extensive background in finance and real estate. He has a strong focus on marketing initiatives and business growth, which has been instrumental in Valbridge's expansion. An active member of the appraisal community, he has previously held leadership positions, including president of the South Carolina chapter of the Appraisal Institute. Karl's unique blend of technical expertise and strategic vision positions him as a key player in the commercial real estate sector. Ooh, you've done a lot.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always fun reading back bios. I feel like guests are like, wait, is that me? Really? Lived experience can feel so different than what we put on paper. But, I know I just covered a bit about your background really briefly, but something I love to do in these conversations is get your story in your own words. So to kick us off today, what first sparked your interest in commercial real estate? And why do you keep doing it?
Growing up, my dad was in the development business, whether it be residential subdivision development in the Vail Valley. In my younger years, was a home contractor building houses. Spent some time developing truck stops across the western part of the United States.
No kidding.
So no kidding. And that was before Buc-ee's was cool. So I got exposed to a lot of different facets in the real estate space, and just kind of grew up with it in my blood.
Yeah. So you were one of those people that's like, I know I want to do this. I have experience and I love it, as opposed to I'm not going to do what my family does.
Man, I wish it was that easy. I don't think it took me a while to figure out what the heck I was going to do.
Sure.
But I did have a passion for real estate and found it and still do today. Very interesting, and probably the one of the few things that still drives my interest every day. And so it makes sense that I ended up in some portion of the real estate space.
Yeah. So I'd love to know something about kind of the early piece of your career, because I feel like a lot of people in the commercial real estate space either end up as a property manager first or get into brokerage. They don't often trip and fall into appraisal. So can you paint a picture of how you found yourself in this part of commercial real estate? And what was it specifically about appraisal that made you go, oh, I like this, as opposed to getting into brokerage or back into development or any other path you might have taken?
Yeah. After college, I did briefly look into mortgage financing, and actually had gone to New York to interview for a couple positions, and at the time it was conduit lending, and they made made significant loans on commercial real estate. Um, was excited by the prospect, but still wasn't totally sold on that path. Uh, but I also began to know that I did not want to see the ups and downs of either brokerage or certainly um, the development side of real estate. You know, my dad would tell you he had probably just as many successful years as not successful. So I wanted to try to find something that still got me involved, but maybe gave me a little more control over my destiny, so to speak. I met through my dad's development. I met an older MAI out of Atlanta, Georgia, and began to talk with him about exactly what he did and the profession as a whole. And so that kind of got me thinking, okay, this might be something that may work for me. And then the next question is, well, who do I know that does this? Where are they? And of course, right out of college, I hadn't taken an in-depth valuation class. Hadn't bought a house, so I have never had any exposure to an appraiser. And so really started digging around and ultimately met with someone here in Charleston that had been around for a long time, and I thought I wanted to work for him, but he actually recommended I go work for his largest competitor, and so that's how
Wow.
I kind of ended up not backing into it, but I had kind of a circuitous path to get in the door here.
That's so funny. Wait, was he like, yeah, I'm going to send this young kid to my competitor and see how that does? What was the thinking there that you think was going through his head?
I think he was probably tired of me bugging him about it. My girlfriend at the time was best friends with his daughter, so I was over there every weekend hounding him. And I think he
Oh,
finally
sure.
was just to the point. Look, you know, get out of my space. No, I think he
That's so
knew that
funny.
I was pretty motivated and certainly looking for a path that um, I could kind of dictate, you know, where it was going to go.
Sure.
And to his credit, you know, his competitors were set up in a much bigger operation and really could bring me in and show me everything. And so, yeah, I mean, for whatever reason, he didn't want me to work for him. That was okay because it turned out all right.
Sure. Yeah, you still were on a good path, not
Yes.
not just kind of pushing you out into the cold.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you mentioned, early on you were talking to somebody from the Appraisal Institute who had the MAI designation, learning what you could to kind of whet your beak of, oh, this is what this industry is about, and maybe it's for me. Can you walk us through your experience earning that designation? What made you decide to go after it? Not all appraisers have it. Um, and what did it teach you about the industry that you think is most used in your appraisal toolkit today?
Um, yeah, so when I did end up at what was then known as Atlantic Appraisals, you know, the partners at the time all had their designations, and they were strongly suggestive, let's put it that way, that we participate in the institute, going to meetings and beginning to take classes. You know, one facet of the profession is certainly experience, but there's also a knowledge-based component to really kind of hone your skills, and so uh, going to chapter meetings and certainly taking Appraisal Institute led education kind of exposed me to a whole nother class of folks that do this for a living, and began to realize that it is a profession. And of course, there's a path to be successful. You kind of could see that, okay, you know, this designation thing. So I'm going to take more classes, and I'm going to meet more people, and I'm going to expand my network, and hone my skills, and theoretically become as good as I can be with the education, and certainly following that up with experience. But you got to see, the light bulb kind of went on, being a part of the institute, and certainly working through the education to attain the designation. It really expands not only your thought process on how to appraise, but really opens up the world of what is appraisal, and there's so many different facets and nooks and crannies in the business. You really get a sense of, okay, there's a lot to do here, and there's certainly areas that I can focus my expertise on. So
Sure. Yeah, it is. The more I learn about appraisal, the more I'm realizing it's a rabbit hole of it's, numbers, but it's also experience. It's also what is value, what is worth. They're at the end of the day more subjective than objective, but they're influenced by objectivity, what numbers matter most. There's all these different ways you can cut an appraisal of a specific property at a specific moment in time. So we'll be getting into that in a little bit, but I would love to know, you go to the Appraisal Institute, you have your eyes open to all this knowledge and experience. What was the process like, and what is now, of developing your valuation philosophy? What are the numbers that are most important to you, the data points that are most important to you? And has that changed over time since you started in your career?
I think your grasp of it certainly changes, but I think it evolves. It really does. I think the longer you're in it, you certainly hone your skills, and I like to think get better at understanding the valuation question at hand, or understanding the solution that has been asked of you to find. And I think, over time you get a little better at maybe understanding some of the nuances, and it's not just a smash and grab, get some numbers out the door. I think over time you begin to digest the information more comprehensively, and probably get a little better at understanding what you're looking for. You can, like you said, you can slice it and dice it anyway for a specific point in time, but there's certainly lots of information out there. And I think, as you kind of go through this profession, you get better at understanding, okay, where do I need to go look? Who do I need to talk to? And so you become a little more efficient, and certainly data gathering. And at the end of the day, that's really what is one of the most important parts of the profession is the data. Having the best data and accurate, and certainly understanding what that data tells you.
Absolutely. Yeah. The more you have, the more informed and granular your assessment can be. Absolutely. So I'd love to know, you've been at Valbridge quite a long time, held several leadership roles. I would love to hear from your perspective, what do you think Valbridge is doing right in the appraisal world, and what has kept you around for so much of your career?
I'll have to come back to what's kept me around. I don't know. I guess they haven't thrown me out yet, but I think one of the coolest things about our company is a devotion to young professionals. We make a point to get the word out that, hey, this is a really good profession. You can have all the success you want. You can have all the flexibility you want, and really try to make a point to get in front of as many young people as possible. You know, the old saying is that the profession's full of a bunch of old gray guys, and so we really take issue with that, and make a point to to bring as many young people into the business as possible. And it helps us because we're able to grow. We're able to cultivate leaders. I mean, the benefits of having young people in the office, in the profession, are numerous. And I think a part of that keeps the older folks engaged and quite frankly, just having a good time, staying involved. You talk about a lot of guys are, talk about when are you going to retire? And I may not. I mean, I may just stay. And it really is very rewarding to be surrounded, certainly in our office here and many of the offices across the country in Valbridge, with young people that really want to learn the profession and certainly, get better at what they do. So it's very enjoyable. So that's
Yeah,
probably why I stay around.
sure. Yeah. My grandmother just turned 93 a few months ago, and she's an amazing woman. One of the things she does is give talks at schools and community organizations, and she loves being around kids. Like she works out more than I do. She travels more than
Good
I
for
do.
her.
Like she is young because she surrounds herself with youth and freshness. And I wholeheartedly underline what you just said there.
Yeah.
Before we get into the fun part of appraisal and practice and ethics and all that stuff, what is a piece of advice that you find yourself giving those young appraisers most often, or advice you would give to somebody who wants to come into the appraisal world?
Well, certainly it's probably two different pieces of advice. I try to get, the young folks that work for me to be patient, take their time, and really be thorough and upfront. Because if you are really thorough and patient in the early stages of the process, by the time you get to the end, um, it's certainly a light bulb going off, or you feel really good about your value conclusion and are able to convey that, in a meaningful manner to the clients. And I think folks looking to get into the business, I would, in addition to telling them, how flexible it is and um, how it's really unlimited as far as what you do with it. I urge folks thinking about it to look at it as a profession. If it's something you want to do, then do it all the way. Take classes from the Appraisal Institute. Go work for designated members and learn the craft from folks that take it extremely serious. And view themselves as professionals. So yeah, kind of two bits of advice for
Yeah.
young folks.
Yeah. Apprentice yourself and measure twice, cut once,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think are the two turns of phrase that make sense there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I do want to get into the patient side. I think that's actually very, very interesting. But before I do, you know, to set the stage, what does the word valuation mean to you? How do you define it? What goes into defining it? Um, Beyond just numbers, what matters most? I'd love to just kind of set a framework before we get into it.
Um, I mean, probably simply put, I mean, it's for me, it's my opinion. I mean, it really is, and that kind of sets the stage for what we do. For me, that term is the definition of my opinion. And so understanding that, I take it very serious, and that kind of leads to all the steps, that we go through to not only arrive at the valuation or conclusion of value, but the way we convey it. And if you think about it to the end user, that term or that valuation, that figure, that consultation is probably just as important to them for a certain reason, a different reason. It's they need to know, if there's litigation involved, where do I stand? Or certainly if someone's buying a piece of property, they want to know. And so I think it's important to understand, that term, while potentially meaning the same to all involved in the process. I think it can be very personal, and certainly, I take it very serious, and for me, that's my opinion of value.
Sure. Yeah, people's livelihoods are at stake when you assign a number to a specific thing, certainly. So, as you are forming your opinion, what rocks are you looking under? What data are you gathering? I think this is where patience comes in, and we can get into the technology side of it all. Tech makes things faster. How do you know to balance speed with technology, with patience and measuredness and being thorough? Kind of give us a overview of what your process looks like and how you pull the different levers of forming your valuation opinion.
Yeah, so we tell these guys, the folks that work for us, by the end of the process, you need to know more about the property or the market than everybody else that you've talked to. And so that involves not only understanding everything there is to know about the question that's been asked of you, whether it be value this property or determine the damages of this effect, and to fully understand exactly what goes into that. And so then the next logical piece is to go to the market and find data that starts to help shape your opinion, and ultimately, head down the path for a conclusion, for a solution. And so, patience is really important. It's something we try to make sure all the folks here and throughout Valbridge as a whole, take your time, work through the data, and that can be time consuming. Verifying data is tough. You mentioned technology earlier, and certainly there's data everywhere. But as people are beginning to understand, some of the data is not good and or misleading, and so it's up to us to take our time and sort through the data to verify it and really get a handle on what's accurate, what's meaningful, and what's ultimately going to help us get to to our solution and our value conclusion.
Do you have any examples of data points that weigh more heavily in the measure than others? Or things that you give like a really good idea of what direction you should be headed in with your analysis?
That's a really good question, and it's and I don't have a really good answer for that. It's really property specific,
Mm.
and also could be, are we talking about today's value, or are we looking at something that took place, 3 years ago? It's a retrospective analysis. But I think, even though each situation is going to be different and unique, ultimately, the patience pays off. You will begin to see the data, I don't want to say rise to the top, but it certainly will start to become apparent as you research the data and are patient, working through, talking to market participants, waiting on someone to call you back. I mean, our folks verify data, and so we're calling property owners, we're calling brokers, whomever's involved in the process, and being respectful of other people's time. Sometimes it takes a little while to get a call back, and that's a specific instance where when we talk to the younger folks, we're like, well, you really need to wait, and this may be the piece of information that kind of helps you. Oh, I know what this is now. I know what the value, and that happens more often than not, and so patience is a big part of working through the data and really getting to the bottom of it and helping lead us to our conclusions.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I definitely in my younger years have had projects that are so close to the finish line, and just the one person who needs to approve it is not calling me back. And I'm like, can't I just push it? Let me just get this off my checklist. So
exactly.
good advice for young folks.
Yeah.
I'm also curious, how do you think about either developing your own in the early days or helping young people now develop their Spidey sense for when data seems wrong or not as important or is maybe being presented in a certain way that doesn't quite fit the picture they're assembling? Because like you said, there's a lot of data out there that's inaccurate, maybe outdated, just something is off. It's a closed wall industry for the most part. Sometimes it's really hard to find these numbers. So how does one develop that sixth sense of something's up here and I should dig deeper?
I had the benefit of working for 5 different partners when I started here, and each one of them had their own kind of way of going about, what we do. And so over time, and certainly, having been corrected, let's say, on a lot of my early jobs, gave me an insight into kind of how they think and how they approach things, and from that you kind of get into when you are talking to market participants, and that is probably one of the most important processes to really getting a handle on the data. It's the human touch. You really, as much as we'd like to just sit in a cave and look at the computer screen and just, come up with a value and then go home, it's really important to pick up the phone or meet people in person, because, buying and selling real estate and even signing a lease is still very personal. There's when a lease is signed, the landlord could be having a really bad day and it just agrees to whatever. Let's get the deal done. And so unless you're actually talking to folks and really getting that human connectivity, a lot of times you don't get the full story. And so that's really a big piece of kind of what we do, or at least what we try to get all our folks to do. And and over time you kind of build your Spidey sense. You talk to enough people, you kind of understand, and you may get 3 different stories on the same transaction, and not that you're being misled, but it's their perspective of that transaction. And so, after talking to 3 or 4 people or whomever, maybe more, you really kind of, you do, your Spidey sense probably goes off, and then you get a sense of, okay, I kind of understand what's happened with this transaction. Now I know, what went down, what the price was, what the motivations were. And so, yeah, I think, you will develop your spidey sense, as you say. It just takes time, and it really, a big part of it is just, beating the bushes for information.
Literally beating the bushes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, to that point, I think that's a really great segue actually into the next phase of the valuation process, which is presenting your opinion of value. And, we talked a little bit on our prep call about how it's very similar to an attorney presenting the case. And, you just said 3 different people could have 3 different interpretations of how and why a transaction occurred. You got to make your case for, well, this is what I think the value is based on all these data points and my understanding of how these things work. So how do you approach putting that case together and then presenting it to parties, particularly those who actually might not like the conclusion that you've drawn? How do you go about that?
Yeah. Or if you're on the witness stand and they don't, you're not on their side. Excuse me. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to, when you ask me what does valuation mean to me? Well, it's my opinion. And so I think, to present the case, you have to do the best job you can, gathering the data, supporting your conclusions. That's the most important thing, to really be able to stand behind the facts that you've presented. And, I tell the young folks, by the time I get to the end of the highest and best use section in the report, my clients should already know what my value is going to be, because I have laid out the facts and I have explained the influences on the market or the property or whatever, the case may be. And so you really are, as you build your case, you present the facts. If you have done a really good job, uncovering every stone, beating every bush, getting all the information, and presenting it in a meaningful manner, by the time you get towards, the meat or the valuation sections, in the process, your reader should have a pretty good idea of where you're going with this. And so, yeah, I do. We talked about it in our prep call, but I do. I think it really is presenting a case, presenting facts, and ultimately that will lead to a credible conclusion, and having the reader or the jury or the judge or your client as consulting to buy into your value, to believe, in a simple sense, to believe what you're telling them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And everything you do, from gaining more education to getting the accreditation to being patient and vetting and collecting the best data possible, all goes towards that acceptance of your professional opinion. That's what you're being paid to do. So you got to do the best job, and hopefully your clients know that you're doing the best job that you can.
Yeah, absolutely. You certainly don't want to rest on your laurels. I mean, if you get you get alphabet soup behind your name, that's great, and maybe that gets you in the door.
Sure.
But you still have to, on each assignment, you have to lay the groundwork. Show the reader or your client that you have a total understanding. It's like I said earlier. Our job is to know more about this property and this market than everybody else. And that's not to say we're the smartest people in the building, but we're going to know something that the owner doesn't know, because we've found out other transactions and details. And we're certainly going to know more than the folks in each of those transactions, because they don't know anything about our subject property or our subject the solution we've been tasked with finding. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully by the end of that process, you've made a really good case and have a credible valuation opinion.
So before we get into the next topic, which I do want to touch on, appraisers have such a unique perspective on the market and what's going on in the world of transactions that, I'd be remiss to not ask you about it. But kind of zooming back and looking ahead the next 5-10 years, we're in the midst of an AI boom, all these different data tools and, just data is becoming more and more accessible, more transparent, and available to more parties in the industry. Definitely brokers are keepers of data, but investors too, and even tenants. And so how do you see the role of the appraiser shifting over the next 5 and 10 years as data becomes more accessible? Does it make the conversations easier because more people know where you're coming from when you present an opinion of value? Does it become harder because people think they know what they're talking about, like someone using WebMD and talking to their doctor? I'm just curious, like how you see the profession evolving with all these changes on the horizon.
I love the WebMD analogy. We certainly get that a lot.
Sure.
Oh, well, so, did you know about the sale? And so the answer is, well, yeah, we did. And actually it was a sale between Johnny and his aunt. So it's not a good sale. I mean, look, the process is probably more important now than it ever has been, for us to verify, for us to talk to people, to really get to the bottom of the transactions and find out what's going on. Because there is a lot of noise. Data is available everywhere. I mean, whether it's Zillow or you name it. I mean, you can get just about everything. But what you don't get is the back end of the story, or the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say. And that's where it's important for appraisers to do their job and do it well. But I think what technology, and certainly folks like you guys, the data you provide, it helps us become extremely efficient. And if embraced, if truly embraced, what data providers like yourself and other sources of information, it just really gives so much more opportunities for appraisers to find out the true details in a lot of these transactions, more so than probably ever before. I can remember when I started, we used to get, dot matrix printouts of sales once a month. And so we'd painstakingly flip through these pages and check if a property looked familiar or we knew the guy who sold it. And so, right there, you've spent a day looking at data. And then not to mention, having to find a phone number to verify. Yeah. And so now that process happens in an instant. We have all the sales data. And so being able to spend more time on verification, calling brokers, waiting, as we said earlier, they need somebody to call you back so I can get that final piece of the puzzle. But, the availability of data today really gives the appraiser an opportunity to spend more time on verification and really valuation. And that's what's exciting about the next 5 to 10 years. Really being able to truly figure it out, come up with an answer, and unfortunately appraisers are notoriously, introverted. And so, I tell them, I'm like, look, folks, you need to be personable. You need to get out there. You need to be able to pick up the phone and really spend some time verifying the data, find out what's going on, really get a sense and an understanding of what's happening. And if you're able to do that, I think you will meld well with all the technology that's here now and what's coming down, in the next year even.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's what gets brokers ahead. I'm amazed at how much information they can get just calling tenants reps. Just like, hey, did this lease roll over? Whatever. Okay, cool. Just little micro data points that just don't exist on the ether. But if you have those extra data points in your back pocket too, it's just it's like pointillism. You step back and you get the fuller picture of the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's our challenge. I mean, that's really what you want to do. You really,
Mhm.
again, like I said, you need to be the one that knows more about the property or the solution than
Mhm.
anybody else. It's like I've looked at everything, and now I kind of understand what's happening. And you share
Yeah.
that. That's part of your conclusion, your opinion of value.
Yeah. That is a perfect segue to us stepping back and looking at the whole thing being the market. So, getting into that, we're at the end of 2025. Somehow, miraculously, 2026 is just around the corner. We've had a couple fun macro events, just a couple going on this year. Based on what conversations you're having with Valbridge's network, let's focus on nationally. I know y'all are international too. What big trends are you seeing in the commercial real estate market right now from a transaction perspective?
That's a good question. And really, in talking to our partners across the country, I'm more convinced now than ever before that real estate is so location specific, and we have seen um, such a diversification just across the country in markets and property types. Um, they're take New York for example. Um, who'd have thought 2 years ago that the apartments rentals would be back up to, pre-pandemic occupancies and rates are climbing. Um, Same with retail users in the city. But yet you go to some markets, in the Sun Belt, the Southeast, and they're struggling. And so there's no real clear cut answer. Uh, but I think what's important to understand is that market participants in real estate seem to have gotten better and more nimble in kind of how they operate.
Hmm.
Real estate forever was an illiquid class of investment because it's sticky, it takes a while to sell.
Sure.
And it still does, but yet you look at the modification of retailers. Now instead of 6,000 square feet, they need a 1,800 square foot space to show you everything. And no, we're just going to ship it to your house. The days are gone. Or well, let me go in the back and can you pull your car around and we'll put the sofa in the back. It's interesting to watch and see how the evolution of certain um, classes of real estate have changed with the times. Office is certainly a big one. Certain everybody left. Then there's mandatory back to the office. I think Jamie Dimon's the most famous for making everybody come back to work. Um, but yet it, it's driving numbers back up in markets that we thought would never recover. So it's very interesting, and I think 2026 will be another year of just changes that we probably may be surprised in some areas. Some things we didn't think were going to happen. Certainly the uh, the folks that have the crystal balls will have said, "Well, we bet heavy on this," but uh, it will be interesting to see kind of how CRE kind of evolves in 2026. You know, regardless of the political winds or anything, the United States economy is still extremely resilient and driven by consumers, whether they be consumers of goods, whether they be consumers of housing, experiential situations. I do think we're going to see more experiential real estate.
Hmm.
We certainly saw it with people going out to eat and things of that. There certainly has been a pullback um, in certain markets, but I expect to see more experiential development coming out of the ground. People are not as tied to things as they are to moments. You know, uh, selfies, enjoying time. I mean, honestly, I
Yeah.
do. I think, and so, developers are starting to realize this and creating opportunities. I mean, at one point, the open air malls were supposed to be dead. I think in my career, I've heard that 3 times. And every time I go to an open air mall, it's been changed.
Sure.
Some have got an amusement park. Some have got uh, various restaurants, bars. It just continues to evolve, and that's actually what's exciting about looking to the future in CRE is just the evolution. It's not the same old same old, um, which makes our business kind of fun. So I don't have an answer for you if you're asking where you would put your money for 2026.
Dang it, that was my next question. No, I'm kidding. No, I mean that's something I really love about this industry too, is there is so much opportunity to be really creative and very community driven that you don't get that kind of flexibility or ingenuity or even just face to face with the place you're investing with other capital markets. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. The Wall Street Journal recently just published an article with the headline CRE is now becoming too cheap to ignore. And, the last several years has seen commercial real estate really go from alternative investment class to a much more mainstream piece of the pie. So I'm curious, in your opinion, do you see more capital coming into the commercial real estate market as we look ahead to 2026 and beyond? And if so, why are you bullish on it?
So I think I'll maybe answer it a little different way. So there's a ton of cash chasing real estate right now,
Mm.
and I mean a just enormous amounts of sideline cash looking for deals. Um, and some of my professional peers I have a tremendous amount of respect for in the brokerage business. One gentleman in particular says, cash drives price, but that is not value. And
Hmm.
so it's very interesting. I always usually call him. I'm like, hey man, I think I'm over my skis on this value. Help me out. Um, but I do think, to answer your question a little differently, I think there are more people investing in real estate. And so while that has not really driven the bulk of that cash, that's on the sidelines looking for deals, chasing deals, um, I think the Wall Street Journal's spot on. It's too cheap to ignore because and I wouldn't use it. I wouldn't say cheap. It's just the threshold for entry is lower. That doesn't mean it's cheap as far as it's inexpensive to buy, but it's certainly easier to invest, and which is a good thing because it certainly uh, it's a hedge against inflation. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons to invest in real estate, but you know, who wouldn't want to own a piece of Hudson Yards in New York? I'd sign up for
Yeah,
that.
same.
And there's certainly a lot of investment vehicles. Apartment multifamily was big for a long time, and there's low thresholds for thousands of investors to get involved, various funds and partnerships. So I do think, that threshold is much lower, but the risk with that is, you're exposing more people to potential, let's say potential, swings in real estate, which we've seen. I think the last sustained swing was when the Lehman Brothers went out of business. Let's just leave it at that. But and so information is important. So valuation is going to be, valuation has to be really transparent to make it is understandable as possible for individual investors. There are people that are just investing and may not fully understand maybe what they're getting into, but I think as long as there's transparency as far as the valuation and kind of what's going on, I think it's going to be an interesting asset class to watch grow. The big players have been in it for years. CalPERS, all the private equity, retirement funds, certainly institutional folks. They've been in this market forever, and so now that it's gotten to the point to where it's opening up for others, I think is exciting.
Yeah, it's a great time to be in commercial real estate. Just find yourself a team of experts that you can rely on for the best the best information.
Yes, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Oh man, Karl, this has been a lot of fun. I just have a couple more questions for you, kind of fun rapid fire style, if you're down, before we wrap up.
Of course.
Okay. So I know you said you don't have an answer to this question, but I'm going to have you answer it anyway. If I handed you $50 million today and you had to invest it before the end of today in real estate, where would you put it?
I would put it in hotels. Do not take this advice and lose money. That is kind of my niche when I'm actually doing appraisals, and I love it. I love it, and it really excites me because each operator is a little different, and some guys do it really well. Some guys need to learn how to do it well.
Sure.
But if I had $50 million, there's probably a couple properties in mind that I would go. 50 million is not going to get them, but I'd buy a piece of it. So that excites me.
You want the luxury hotels.
Well, yeah, they're just in really dynamic locations, and certainly in 2026, I think, we'll probably see a pullback in lodging, certainly, occupancies across the country just because the supply is crazy. But there are a few markets that are still really good and expected to still outshine. So yeah, that's where I'd put $50 million.
Okay, good to know. I'll send you. I actually just finished up and we published a 2026 hospitality report. So I'll send that to you after this call.
Yeah, be good.
We got some exciting hospitality assets on Crexi.
Nice.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given about being an appraisal or being an appraiser?
God, I've been so fortunate, like I said, I've worked for 5 partners and all of them were mentors at one point or another. And I still have mentors in the business today. I think, I don't know that I've ever gotten any bad advice. I think certainly, probably maybe, negative association or something, about the profession, or maybe, probably hearing some disparaging comments about a competitor or something. It certainly, it gives me pause, and to be, eyes kind of wide open in the business, which is nothing different. I mean, you ask a broker and then your head has to be on a swivel to know everybody is. But, yeah, I'm fortunate. I really very lucky to have worked, have come in the business under the partners that I did, and I'm just very fortunate to have been able to work for them, and a couple of them are still here, so I'm pretty lucky that way.
Awesome. I mean, I love to hear that. I love when it's like, I can't think of anything.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then before I let you go, any parting words or final thoughts that you would want to leave our listeners with about your work, Valbridge, appraisal in general?
Yeah, I actually, for people looking to get in the business, it's a great profession, and we have grown over the years and continue to grow because of that. Sky's the limit. There's no ceiling to kind of what you can do and what you can accomplish. And certainly the flexibility is great. I mean, we've got moms with newborns, and we've got guys that work 80 hours a week. We've got probably I don't know, we have a diverse workforce, which is just really cool. And so yeah, I it's not a shameless plug for Valbridge, but we certainly make it a point to drive our ambitions for young people, and to provide a great place to work. But we also we've just rolled out a new software platform that the young folks actually think is really cool. And so I think certainly for folks coming out of college, take a look at the profession if you have an interest, and or you can't really figure out what you've got going on. We certainly think we do a really good job with it at Valbridge, and our commitment to our intern program and diverse workforce, and like I said, the software. That was a big commitment by my partners, and to dive into that, and we're excited about it. We're ready for the future, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, investing in it. Well, Karl, where can those folks get in touch with you if they want to connect? Email, social media?
Yeah, either way. Certainly LinkedIn is great, and our website is very easy. Certainly for an old guy like me, but I think the young kids do a good job with it too. And all of our contact information is there. And if you send me an email, I'll respond. I'm still follow that rule. If it comes in today, it will be replied to before I go home at night. So certainly easy to get a hold of.
Amen. Such a great thing to do. highly encourage all young people in this industry to do that and be responsive.
Yes.
Well, Karl, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time. I know this, like I said at the beginning, we were trying to get this done. We got it done, and it absolutely exceeded expectations. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for having me on, and a lot of fun, and certainly patience on both sides trying to get the technology to work, and it's worked beautifully today. So this is great. Thanks again.
We made it happen.
Yes.
And thank you everyone who tuned in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. Leave us a comment, rating, review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check out our full library of episodes and show notes at crexi.com/podcast, or visit our YouTube channel if you want to see video recordings of everything. Take care and be sure to tune in next time.